The beginning of this extraordinary adventure was because I was stuck working for a very large consultancy firm in London and having to save a petroleum company tens of thousands of pounds on their paper buying budget. And I honestly had one of those moments where you just stop and you think, what the heavens am I doing with my life?
I am so happy to have Emma Barnes here. For 18 years, she's been running an award-winning indie publisher, Snowbooks. And I assume that growing frustrated at the inefficiencies and the backwardness of the publishing industry, you decided to solve it by learning how to program and launching your own software startup. Meanwhile, as if that wasn't enough, you launched Make Our Book, which has now put 1,000 children into publication. There's so much I want to learn about the industry, the processes, the opportunities. Thank you so much for being here.
I appreciate it.
So you started by kicking off your own publisher.
My best friend had written a book and got published with a large academic publisher. And we were aghast the process because there wasn't one. And then the editorial feedback was extremely peculiar. Can you put some more graphs in? Sure. What point would you like it to be further illustrated? Oh, just some graphs. I was, oh, really? This is what publishing is like. Gosh. But in our incredible naivety, we thought, well, we can do better than that. And we didn't even know the difference between an academic publisher and trade. So we just dived straight in with a very general creation. And we thought, well, we'll publish a bit of this, that, and the other. Works for Penguin, as it was back then, will work for us. And got incredibly lucky and have managed to survive and getting on for 20 years. The luck speaks really to part of your question there, which is, why did we build software out of this company? I had brought with me all of these aspirations and kind of norms, actually, all of these normal ways of working from my previous life, working for actual companies. And I just thought that was how the world worked. You had process, you had systems, you had an aspiration. So trying to make a success of my new little business really meant doing what I did best and understanding how process works and understanding how selling works. I did a sort of presentation for Waterstones, sort of presentation that you would expect to make. I researched it. I understood a lot about the buyer at the time. I went through their past buying decisions. I did some market research and presented it in the normal style and did a lovely sort of presentation pack with their logo on it and, just a completely bog standard approach. And I got a shell-shocked phone call a week later saying, come on in and meet us. The bar in publishing was so low that doing a tailored presentation for somebody about our books was enough. And that got us onto the 3 for 2s. All of our books went onto the 3 for 2s for the first 2 years. And we got a kind of Da Vinci Code lookalike, which was one of the big books at the time. And we sold over 100,000 units, and that set us up, really. And then the rest, it was gravy. We kept publishing, kept on going, had dreadful years, had amazing years. But we have become known as a small, feisty publisher who is very efficient.
What do you think that authors most misunderstand? Because obviously, as a first-time author, you see the publisher as a panacea that's going to solve all of your problems and make everything perfect.
Yeah.
What do you wish authors knew before they engaged with any sort of publisher?
I wish there were more accessible resources so that you could read at a glance how things work and respond accordingly, because the publishing process is screwed up, is the most polite I can say. And it is useful to know that going into it and be aware that everyone in publishing is trying their best and knows that there are inadequacies in the process. But to go into the engagement with the publisher thinking that they are always going to be right and always going to be doing the right thing is, I think, setting oneself up for failure. We try to counter this, sending as much information as we can. And it comes out quite self-deprecating, but it's just better to be upfront, I think, before any contracts have been signed about the realities of the trade. No publisher can promise anything. It's not fair to say, we will make your book work, because it's not within one's power to make that promise. So we have an open rejection letter, for instance, and we lay out the reasons why you shouldn't trust our opinion, because we're like people at a jumble sale, rummaging through the assortment on a table in front of us, trying to grab the bits that we think we can, spit and polish and make some money off and run off. We're not your friends. We're not people whose opinions you should trust. I have hated every Booker Prize-winning book in the last 25 years, and those are objectively good books, but I don't like them. So how valuable is my opinion? It's important that authors know that publishers are not perfect, and they know that whatever they say is no reflection on the merit of the writing.
You've been in the business of essentially modernizing publishers and trying to fix some of these issues, both through
Yes.
your own work at Snowbooks and also through the software that you're building at Consonance and providing to all the other publishers. What does your dream publisher look like when you look forward 10 years or 20 years to what the state of the industry should be? Like, what's the diff?
Technical literacy. So an ability to take control of the assets that you do have, the data, the insights, and to do something with them that sells more books. And so that might look like the ability for somebody in the marketing department to be able to write a quick HTML static website that promotes this particular book with a link so that people can sign up to a web form without that having to go to tender, without having to get a man in to spec out a project, to write the thing, without having to go to sort of a technical department. Not basic technical literacy skills, but functional, useful, pragmatic, lack of fear about engaging with the technology that is out there. There's a range, isn't there? Because there are lots of really useful services that exist, Squarespace. It's on a computer, but it's not programming, it's interacting in a confident manner. And then there's the other end of the spectrum, which is knowing that you can scrape the Amazon website daily and pick up the ranking and correlate that with the number of reviews that day and do some analysis for yourself to see if there's any patterns to be noticed. Being able to subscribe to another sort of API service where you might get notifications about price drops and perform an analysis on that. It'll never come up at the hiring stage, and it will never come up in the day-to-day job. Where it will come up is your ability to do your job to the best of your ability without your boss telling you to do it. This is the whole thing. There's no sense in publishing at the moment that these are valuable skills. The valuable skills are networking, working hard, IT, which is Excel management, and not dropping the ball despite having no tools to help you with that. So I don't think you should fear a lack of technical knowledge in the sense that it will impede you in your career progression. I feel like it's the way to make yourself stand out from the rest of the crowd, but also to turn the job into the job you want it to be. It's just awful to have to copy and paste from one spreadsheet to another. And you think, this is not using my brain to the best of its capabilities. There are better things that humans can be used for. I feel like the lower and middle ranks of publishing, those individual humans have been denied the opportunity to develop those skills because the higher ups don't recognize that they are important and therefore can't coach into them. And so we're in this horrible repeating cycle of let's get somebody else to worry about the computer stuff. We're all about books.
You wrote an article, and I can't remember your exact phrasing, but what I took away from it was that one of the reasons that publishers are forced to offer such bad deals to authors is that they have such inefficient cost structures. And the reason is they're throwing a dozen interns at what should be done by a script. And because of their lack of technical literacy, they have these insane costs behind the scenes. Is that roughly the way you see it, or is there some more nuance to that?
There is nuance, but in trade, I feel like until you've refined your editorial strategy, you're always going to be in a volume game. And so the nuance is more that there are going to be many books that need to be published in order for a few to do really well. And it's those that will pay for the others. The difficulty really from the author's point of view is that you are an individual human person, and yet you are being managed alongside 500 peers. And one of those peers is going to pay for everyone else. And it might be you and it might be someone else. And that's not really your problem, except you're now part of that structure. So I think that's more the challenge there. The inefficiencies, I feel, are more about upside. I think that actually, because it's so hard to sell books, publishers are quite efficient through bloody mindedness. They care and they're hardworking and they somehow make it work, but only because they're badly paid and they're passionate, as in they put in more hours than they're necessarily paid for. So I think that actually the increase in the ability to use tools and to use data would result in an easier life for publishers, and maybe even, and this would be a lovely virtual circle going up, maybe even higher rates of pay, because they would be empowered to be more efficient in their jobs, and there would be more money for both them and the content creators.
I see people now beginning to innovate with the business model of books. For example, the digital upsell, selling their book for $10, but then for $50, you also get the Excel templates. And for $200, you also get the videos to coach you through them. That adds 10% to the cost of creating a book, but it doubles their profits. And suddenly that allows them to do other interesting things with their creativity and their business. And I wish more people approached books with this sort of entrepreneurial mindset that you're talking about. The artist mindset is beautiful and it has a place, right? That's a crucial part of creating a good book. But you need more than just the artist mindset.
I completely agree. This is why I emphasize the linearity of my experience, because I started with a normal publisher and we did all right for accidental reasons. You know, the business model was not inherently innovative or ever going to be successful unless we got lucky. And that doesn't feel very good. So Consonance, the publishing management platform software, on top of that makes a lot of sense, because the software is there to solve the problems that we experienced as publishers. And in fact, it's interesting because as the team has grown, we have hired from publishing, because we all feel that pull, that irritation of our lost hours of having to have human workarounds because of a lack of systems, or even worse, maybe systems that promise what they can't deliver.
You just hit an insane milestone of publishing 1,000 kids. It happened, what, in the last week? How in the world did you did this? What is the project? I'm sure everyone's going to love hearing about it, because a lot of us were printing our own books. So we're dealing with some of these issues that you've obviously absolutely conquered.
It is the real life embodiment of everything I've been yammering on about for 15 years. You know, you can do as many talks as you want about technical literacy, think of the things you can do. So this is what a single person sitting on their sofa can do on a series of Friday afternoons if they know programming. So we may have a mixed audience of programmers, non-programmers, but to let you know, this is a side project that I started as a result of obviously being very keen on books, but also having a son who went to a school who had book week annually, and watching this in a sort of baffled manner, seeing, you know, film cartoon character dress up day and thinking this is strangely unrelated to books as I know them, and complaining about this to the literacy coordinator and saying, how about we pop together, you know, lovely poems, I see them coming home, and it'll be wonderful and lovely thing for the school to treasure. And it will give the children a sense of their work being elevated, because you may know what it's like. The matter comes home in book bags and it's scrappy and it goes on the fridge and goes in the bin. And that's a dreadful way to treat somebody who is learning the beauty of poetry, or to treat someone's illustrations. It's either that or you end up with a mounting pile in the corner of the living room. It's a lovely way to take a snapshot of a child's ability at a point in time, but also to elevate it to the same level as the books they are instructed to read. The powerful nature of it just has to be seen to be believed.
For anyone who doesn't know, and correct me if my understanding is wrong, Emma, but basically the kids do a schoolroom assignment.
Yeah.
They write something, they draw something, they create something, and then it comes back to them as a published book. All the parents can buy a copy, the schools can put it in their library, the kids get this permanent record, which kicks off this whole virtuous cycle of getting excited about writing, of getting excited about drawing, because they've got this artifact and they can show it off to their friends. It's such a great thing.
Exactly. And it looks a bit like that. I've got one of these stupid screen things on, but you know, it's a proper book that goes on the shelf with all of the other books and looks important. It looks permanent.
The first time you hold your own book with your writing as a physical object, it's such a magical transformational moment. I love the spirit of this project so much. And then also that book looks amazing. Like, how in the world did you actually make these things? What's the process here? Because it's hard. It takes months.
Yes, this is, again, it's the intersection of technology and a love of books. So this is, in a very, very dull sounding way, this is a Rails app, which is a web app. It is Ruby code. This cover is made with a library called Prawn. It's all numbers and code and techations and boring, but it produces beauty. It produces a spine that is correctly calculated. It's the things that you can do. When you have a worthy goal in mind, it makes you a better programmer, because if you want this automatic typesetting to work, the pagination works out well. That was a complicated bit of recursive programming as well to get the index to work. This is why I keep saying practice with your technical knowledge, because ideas will come along, and this could just be an idea that you have, but then you take it to a board, or you take it to a decision-making body, or you take it to an external development agency, and they put a price tag or a time tag on it. I mean, that would cost £100,000 for an agency to make, wouldn't it? Because everything does. And if you were trying to get it signed off internally, it would take months, and you'd need to have a watertight business case, and the spontaneity and the joy and the iteration and the fluidity would be knocked out of it. So you can sit on the sofa and you can do this with no permission. You could just have an idea and do something about it. And I find that very liberating. I also want to talk about the idea of having structurally inclusive businesses. One of the things I'm most proud about with this project is that it genuinely opens up the idea of being a published person to all 12, 13-year-olds, 14-year-olds out there. And we have done some hugely pride-making projects with children who would not normally feel that they have a position in the world.
I volunteer once a week online with children. I've just seen their confidence leap, having this project to work on, writing stories and turning them into a book, being heard and having their work, as you say, Emma, elevated from a piece of paper on the fridge to a printed book, an actual book. If it happens for us, it happens when we're adults, generally.
Yeah.
And to have his work become something solid, it's just, you can see them shining when they get that attention, and you can see them building their confidence. And that's what everyone needs. So thank you.
Thank you.
As the proud owner of a completely non-marketable media studies degree, the one thing I've retained is that the medium is the message. People give books a special kind of attention when they're reading it. Like, it occupies physical space and they give it dedicated time.
Yeah, it is a form that brings with it magical cachet. A book is a fantastic way to encapsulate everything in one neat package, and that's absolutely applicable to many other businesses.
On tools, printing in particular, I've been relying, I would say I am fully reliant on Amazon KDP for my paperbacks.
Right. Okay.
And I had a regional print shop in the UK who were lovely. But after Brexit, it's now impossible for me to ship to my European customers. Not impossible, but delayed enough to be impractical. Are there other options? How do you approach it? Is there something people should know about that they don't?
There's a couple of things that I wish the print industry in general would get on with, which is having an API. If I could send the order information, the quantity information, and the print files, which is a solved problem, right?
The number of orders I've had messed up because they attached the files that they had on file instead of the ones I attached to the email. And it's like, well, you just sent 500 books to a customer with the wrong innards. It's got someone else's forward in it. This is a disaster for me. And they're like, oh, well, it was on file. I agree. It's a solved problem. Why is it still so inefficient?
This is one of the reasons why I'm so het up about technology doing its job, because it has very human repercussions. It's us that looks like idiots when technology goes wrong, because these failings affect us very personally. And all of the things I've built have been to try to stop me looking like an idiot. That's the main sort of driver. There's a whole rights section of consonants, and it's built because once I sold the French rights twice and looked like a right prat as a result. You can bring technology to very precise problems. To answer your question, Make Our Book uses an Ingram company called Lightning Source, who have an outpost in Milton Keynes, but also one in Australia and one, I think, somewhere near Australia maybe, and another one in the States. So that solved my immediate problem of suddenly not being able to trade with the rest of the world. I've got separate locations. It's not a fully automated, seamless process where a customer pays with Stripe and there's a gorgeous API call that goes off somewhere. The underlying technology is still not yet entirely fit for purpose.
I wanted to ask about the creative process, because you've seen a lot of authors go through this. I've heard horror stories from publishers if you sign an author and then a year later, there's still not even a manuscript. Meanwhile, you've gotten a ton of kids into print. They don't seem to have any big problem with it.
Schools being a structured environment, it is, I think, easier to time box creative work. Children are actually quite fearless and actually quite happy to say, what is it we're doing? A poem. Okay, bang, bang, bang. There you go. What's next? So, which is liberating and freeing to sort of witness them and their almost carelessness, because it comes out all right. My creative process then goes, it's knowing when to stop and when to let these pieces exist as a snapshot in time that reflects nicely for the child, both now and in the future, on where they were, and to show progress for later.
I think you've inspired everyone here to run through a brick wall. You seem like a real go-getter. I'm wondering, during Snow Books, if there were periods of time you were overwhelmed, and if so, how you dealt with them.
It's not necessarily overwhelmed with work, it's overwhelmed with the emotions of the thing. When you build your own thing, when you write your own book, there is a part of your soul in that. It's important to you that the thing that you have created is successful by whichever metric you value. So yes, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of days of awfulness. And it's an interesting point, actually. I say this to my son sometimes. Be really careful about what you choose to do with your life, and maybe don't make it the thing that you care about more than anything. I haven't yet finished a book this year. We're in nearly April. I find it hard to read nowadays because I have given everything to books, my heart and my soul, and they are now tied to my ability to buy food, pay the rent. And so they've taken on this sort of monstrous status of being not just something I love, but something I need. And it's dangerous, right? You write a book and then you realize that's not enough. You have to become the perfect marketer. And it totally speaks to Rob's point about think about this stuff before you've written the book and then write the right book. Makes it a lot more straightforward.
If you were giving advice to someone who'd always dreamed of writing a book, let's say your kids are growing up, they're at book writing age, or someone's sitting down, they're like, this is important for my business, or I've always wanted to write this, whatever the reason is, what would you tell them at the start of the journey?
I would say write the book at least 5 times before you think it's done. The book is not the same as any other sort of writing. So don't put too much of your soul into it. Break it down logically and in a structured fashion, and understand what you're trying to do with each piece. What I'm saying is try to take the emotion out of it as much as possible, which will enable you not only to hopefully structure the thing in a more sensible way and in a way that others can parse more easily, but so that you don't put every last drop of your identity into it. So if it stumbles, you don't feel like iterating and going back and trying again and again and again. Hold a bit of yourself back so that it doesn't crush you.
I adored the anecdote. Both Pressfield and Trollope talked about it, where you sit down for your writing session. You're doing, well, let's say 2 hours of writing in the morning. You finished a book halfway through that session. What do? Set it aside, get a blank piece of paper, start the next one. It's like removing the drama. It's like, it's work. Yeah. Do the work. I love that.
That's it. And that's a segue then into it becoming a product, because it's not a piece of you. It is a means of making money. Now, we know this it isn't. We know that it's more important than that. But if you can try and convince yourself of an element of that, I think it's good self-care.
Well, Emma, you've been so gracious with your time. I know you're so busy. You've given us so much knowledge. I hugely appreciate it. Where can people go to learn more about your work, or to help you, or to return the favor?
That's extremely kind. I can't thank you enough for letting me talk with you. Please go to makeourbook.com, snowbooks.com. And please, if you happen to be a large enterprise publisher needing software, then you're welcome to go to consonants.app.
Amazing. You know so much of the industry. I'm going to be coming to you for help next time I have a question. Thank you so much, Emma.
I hope you stay in touch. Thank you very much.